Well, welcome to this webinar. My name is Saki Santorelli. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Mindfulness and Medicine, Healthcare, and Society, and I'm looking forward to spending the next hour with you. But before we go any further, how about if we just take a few moments to share silence together? Feeling free to leave the eyes open or to close your eyes. Just taking a moment to arrive. And to settle in. And perhaps to shift the focus of your attention from all of the activities and engagements you've been involved in over the course of the day or maybe the last hour. To sitting here and listening and participating in any way that you'd like. So maybe taking a moment to feel the breath in the body. Whether you're sitting or standing. Perhaps feeling the air around the skin. The actuality of standing or sitting as it feels in the body, as it's known in the body. Might even notice without any analysis or need to change anything, what's on the mind. Noticing the play and the passing of thoughts and emotions. And perhaps even becoming attentive to the awareness that actually knows all of this. And then in your own time, as you feel ready, perhaps taking a deeper and more voluntary breath in and out and knowing you're taking this breath. Actually feeling it in the body. Noticing as well the deliberateness, the purposefulness, the intention to take this breath in and let this breath out. And maybe one more, if you'd like. And if your eyes have been closed, then gently allowing the eyes to open. So from time to time, I'm going to use notes. You'll see me look at my paper now and again. Now and again, I'll refer back to a few lines of reference in a book or two. Mostly what I'm really interested in us engaging in a kind of inquiry together around a series of questions that I'll speak about in a few moments. To begin, I'd like to just take a few moments to frame this webinar series. Many teachers from the Center for Mindfulness will be participating in this webinar series. They'll be making webinars over the course of the next few weeks, and then we'll be airing them over the next couple of months, and then across the year as well. And we're really excited about this process, and it comes as a way of us also to introduce you to our inaugural Fall Teaching Institute. And I'll say a little bit about this. So, in a very real way, for the last 35 years, the Center for Mindfulness has been a teaching organization or an educational organization. Everything that we do has an educational outcome, including our research. So even though we're investigating both on the clinical outcomes side and on the more basic science and in these days neuroscience implications of mindfulness and of MBSR, which is mindfulness-based stress reduction, we're always investigating with the intention of also educating. And so in a very real way, our mission has been to educate, and this webinar series is another way for us to continue this tradition and to expand it to people that we're not face-to-face with in a classroom or in a seminar hall. So maybe a little bit about the Fall Institute. Well, first of all, it marks the 35th birthday or the anniversary of our work here at UMass. So it all began with the stress reduction program, the stress reduction clinic, and it has continued over the years to develop through research, through professional education and training, largely through Oasis Institute, and through our annual scientific conferences. So this fall, we've actually set aside a specific period of time from early September till mid-November, till just before Thanksgiving in the United States, to have a concentrated period of time dedicated to education and training. And this will include our first teacher development intensive done right here at the Center for Mindfulness in September, in early September. It will include an 8-week practicum that takes place in the stress reduction clinic. Florence Mulio-Meyer, Alana Rosenbaum, and I will be teaching in the stress reduction clinic and in parallel conducting an advanced seminar in mindfulness for seasoned MBSR teachers that I hope that you'll go to our website, explore, and apply for. We'll also be holding a 2-day conference this fall around teaching and teaching competencies, based a lot on the work of our colleagues in the UK, Rebecca Crane and William Koiken and Mark Williams at Oxford University. Willem is from Exeter University and Becca from Bangor University in Wales. And the Center for Mindfulness is going to be dedicating more and more of our energies to developing, along with them, a way of assessing our teachers in training, our teachers that are here and actively working, so we can begin to understand what it takes to become an MBSR teacher and various ways of assessing that process as teachers continue their ongoing formation. And I think that's really important. I'm certainly continually in formation. In fact, if I felt like I wasn't, I'd probably stop teaching. So in the context of that fall seminar series, or that fall teaching institute, which really is all about next steps in the education and training of MBSR teachers, a kind of deepening of that process, and a way of hopefully reaching out to colleagues and creating greater and greater access to people in other parts of the world. I'd like to speak with you today about what it means to actually be an MBSR teacher. Who is actually the teacher? What has the inner landscape of the teacher got to do with their work? The ways they engage with people in the classroom? And in this case, the MBSR or the MBCT classroom, or maybe the larger MBI, which stands for Mindfulness-based Interventions classroom. Because let's remember that the M is the most important part of that acronym. If it's mindfulness-based, it means that mindfulness or awareness itself is at the center of the entire process, the entire approach. And if you're not an MBSR teacher, but you've been a participant or you are interested in being a participant in an MBSR classroom, this conversation is as important to you, I think, as it is to those people who are teachers or who are training to become MBSR teachers. Well, why is that? Because if you were a participant in an MBSR class, mindfulness would be at the center of the work that you'd be engaging in with yourself over the course of those 8 weeks. Just as we might ask the question, who is the teacher? What is the teacher? What has the inner landscape of the teacher got to do with teaching itself? What is the nature of an education that's designed to liberate? You could ask yourself those same questions as a participant. Who am I? What are my ideas and views and opinions about who am I? What am I capable of? What am I not capable of? And these questions are not rhetorical. They're real. They're essential questions, whether teacher or participant. And that's what the entire field of participatory medicine, at least as we see it through the lens of mindfulness, is all about. It's not about disseminating information. It's not just about telling people about stress and stress physiology. But it's about experience. It's about what we call practice. And it's about reflecting upon practice over and over and over again. And so just as a teacher or a teacher in training in MBSR might reflect on who am I as the teacher, you might as well reflect upon who am I as the participant. What are my ideas and opinions about who and what I am? How much of those are conditioned by history? What's really possible? I mean, imagine this. 35 years ago, it sounded radical to even consider bringing meditation into mainstream academic medicine. And if we would have been constrained by those views that this is crazy or radical or insane in some way, we wouldn't be here today. There wouldn't be research out about MBSR and about mindfulness. In our own case at the Stress Reduction Clinic, more than 20,000 people referred by physicians, healthcare providers, and through self-referral have completed this program. They wouldn't have done so if the standard view of the day would have prevailed. The truth is we're a whole lot bigger than who and what we think. And in many ways, at least as we've approached the educational process in MBSR for our participants, we're capable of beginning to discover our bigness, our largeness, our capacity to transcend some of those ideas, opinions, and views that, while at one time may have been useful, productive, evolutionary even, can also become counter-evolutionary. By example, one of the participants in my class not that long ago said, this is a woman with a very serious cancer, who came to the stress reduction clinic not in the hope of, in quotes, being cured, but of meeting her life in new ways, however how much life she had left, because it was predicted by her physicians that she probably had about a year to live. So she actually decided, if I've got a year to live, I want to live it well. I want to live it as fully and as richly as possible. And one day she came to the class, maybe around the 6th week of our 8-week course, and she said, you know, I've discovered something. I have cancer. This cancer might kill me. But I know beyond a doubt now, I'm not my cancer. I'm not my cancer. In a very real way, she has transcended a whole set of ideas and views and opinions about who she is and what's possible. And in a very real way, what MBSR is interested in is that kind of transformational possibility, rather than simply adjusting to circumstances. And the realization of that kind of transformation comes out of inquiry, out of wondering, out of reflection, out of being willing to look beyond the usual, look beyond what we think is true, to maybe discovering that there is a larger truth, a larger set of possibilities. And in a very real way, it all boils down to, who is it that I think I am? Whether you're the teacher or you're the participant. If you're the teacher, of course, or the participant as well, but the teacher in particular, asking questions about your inner landscape are really important. As the educator, the American educator, Parker Palmer, has so beautifully introduced into our culture. He asks a very interesting question in the early pages of his book, The Courage to Teach. He says, this book explores the teacher's inner life, but it also raises a question that goes beyond the solitude of the teacher's soul. How can the teacher's selfhood become a legitimate topic in education and in our public dialogues on educational reform? How can the self of the teacher become a legitimate topic in education? I'd have to say it ought to be an essential topic in education, and clearly in the education of MBSR teachers, and clearly in the education of the people who take an MBSR program at the Center for Mindfulness in Medicine, Healthcare, and Society. That is a central question. So let's explore this a little today. I'd like to begin by exploring it through some poetry. So the great American poet Robert Bly has done a service for all of us in the world, because he's translated so many great non-English speaking poets into the English language. And of course, in some ways, something is lost because you can't actually capture the lyricism and the nuance of another language when you're translating it into English or any other language. Nonetheless, the essential is often captured. So there's a poem by the great German poet Rainer Maria Rilke. Goes like this. My life is not this steeply sloping hour in which you see me hurrying. My life is not this steeply sloping hour in which you see me hurrying. Much stands behind me. I stand before it like a tree. Like a tree. I am but one of my many mouths, and at that the one that will be still the soonest. I am the rest between two notes that are somehow always in discord, because death's note wants to climb over. But in the dark interval reconciled, they stay here. They stay here trembling. And the song goes on, beautiful. What's he saying to us? He starts, my life is not this steeply sloping hour in which you see me hurrying. You might imagine he's running through some city or some town. And if you caught a glimpse of him, you'd say, oh, he's just stressed or harried or really busy. But he's telling us something else. My life is not this steeply sloping hour, he says. That is but one of my many mouths, one of the many ideas about who and what I am. And Walt Whitman in 1855, walking the streets of Brooklyn, New York, said a very similar thing. He talks about being depressed or being sick or worrying about his mother or his father or his lovers, of being anxious and overwhelmed at moments. And then he stops in the middle of a poem in Leaves of Grass and says, but these are not the me myself. These are not the me myself. He's recognizing something deeper than all of the pulls and hauls. And he says, beyond the pulling and hauling stands what I am. We all know that pulling and hauling. And his work as the poet is to say to us, let's look deeper. Who and what am I if I'm not all that pulling and hauling? That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, that he isn't worried about his folks or his lovers or his clothes. Because he is. And Rilke is probably rushing through some town. But they're telling us, I'm more than this. I'm more than this. And the great Spanish poet Juan Ramón Jiménez is telling us the same thing in his poem that's entitled, I Am Not I. I am not I am this one walking beside me, whom I do not see, whom at times I manage to visit, and whom at other times I forget. You know what that's like. At sometimes I manage to visit, and other times I forget. Who remains calm and silent when I talk, who forgives gently when I hate, who walks where I am not, who will remain standing when I die. I am not I. So I hope this makes you wonder, reflect on what and who am I? What has this got to do with my life? Whether I'm a teacher of MBSR or a participant in an MBSR class or just a human being attempting to live and thrive and flourish. These are central questions, and somehow or other they can become and probably need to become a deeper part of our everyday existence. Our capacity to wonder and explore and uncover and imagine and realize directly. Of course, if we are willing to take up these questions, then in a very real way we have to be willing to live with the answers we begin to discover. And quite frankly, at least for myself, this is hard work. This is not particularly comfortable. This is not particularly easy. But I would say it's essential. I would say that the entire span of my life has been enriched and in many ways navigated through these questions, by these questions. And if you're an MBSR teacher, they become critically important. Because in a very real way, they require us to be undone. They require us in some way to fall apart. And in an interesting way, to fall apart nearly continually. And in a manner that doesn't actually diminish our capacity to meet other people, to do our work, to fulfill our obligations, but in some way it enhances our capacity to meet ourselves, to be in relationship to other people, to follow through in our responsibilities. Because these are not otherworldly or mystical questions. They are the very questions about being a human being. When we're a teacher, when we're not a teacher, when we're a participant in an MBSR classroom. When we practice mindfulness. When we live our lives, when we interact with our children, when we make love, when we drive a car, when we garden or prepare a meal. But they do require something of us. There's a cost. There's a cost. Is a kind of dissolution of who and what we think we are, a kind of dissolution of all of the ways we've come to think about ourselves. Years ago, I did a research study in the stress reduction clinic back in 1990, I believe, 89 or 90. Was my dissertation study. And I was exploring in some depth through structured interviews the experience of several people participating in the stress reduction clinic. And one of the the things they all said toward the end of the 8 weeks in those interviews was that they felt a lot more motion in their lives. In fact, some of them said they felt more like verbs than like nouns. More like verbs than like nouns. Isn't that interesting? I mean, we love nouns. They have an enormous capability and functionality in our language, in our sense of place. They're solid, they're stable, they're steadying. They're known. But they also can be fixed. Whereas verbs have a lot of action, a lot of movement, a lot of potential, a lot of nimbleness. And I think that's what they were saying. I feel like there's more movement here, more possibility here. I've sort of stepped out of a certain kind of box or illusory box of conditioning, of habit, of pattern. And if you are an MBSR teacher or are in the process of becoming one or interested in becoming one, entering that river, this stream of continual undoing, is part of the curriculum. It's an essential aspect of the work. It's your assignment, and it's no different if you're a participant in an MBSR program. It's your assignment to actually begin to see what's possible, to notice the way our habits and our patterns and our views and opinions about who and what I am might actually get in the way of our discovering who and what we really are and what we're really capable of. And that can be from the smallest piece. It doesn't have to be just as it was for the woman who discovered that she is indeed not her cancer. You might have a view that you can't relax. You've never known how to relax or be more at ease, and discover 8 weeks later that you now do have some capacity to regulate, to be more at ease, to be less anxious. That would be a major transcending of an idea and a view about who or what you are. You might discover that the same problem or the continuing problem that you're having with a coworker changes because you approach it differently. It isn't because they change, it's because you changed even just slightly. For that kind of change to take place means you've had to step out of a view and opinion about who or what you are. And so in some very real way, teachers and participants in MBSR are doing the same work. They have different roles, no doubt. But there's a certain kind of work we're all doing simultaneously. And that makes for an incredibly lively classroom, or at least a possibility of an incredibly lively classroom. Because it's exciting and it's wild and it's unpredictable and it can't be purely corralled or controlled through a formula or through the curriculum or through an agenda. It means we actually have to be present to this moment and to this moment and to this moment and to this moment. So let's just take a moment and eyes open or eyes closed and just reflect upon this. Noticing What's happening in the body right now? What do you notice about the condition of the mind? What about the quality of awareness itself right now? Are you feeling smaller or bigger in terms of possibilities? I think this is a really wonderful place to stop, for us to conclude for now. If you're an MBSR teacher, I'd like to encourage you to go to our website, to click on the Fall Teaching Institute, to review the materials that you'll find online at that site, and to consider if any of what we're offering would be of use to you, of value to you. If you're interested in being a participant in an MBSR classroom, certainly you'll see that on our website there is a place to click for the stress reduction clinic, the stress reduction program, or what we call mindfulness-based stress reduction. If you live in another part of the world, there are now MBSR programs all over the world, on 6 continents. You might do some research and explore if there's one near you. We also have an online MBSR program, and you can click on our website to find information about how to access that online program. In any case, I want to thank you for joining me today. And I hope someday that we'll meet in the flesh, face to face. And I wish you a good day. And I wish and hope that you take up the adventure of discovering who and what you really are.